Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining online. I see we have 40 or 50 people online, and we got a full room here. So this is great. Glad we can connect everybody here. So I'm Brian Weibrecht, representing the post for Rhein-Main for SAME. And next slide. So I'll let you guys read this, but we're going to share these slides later so you can read all about our vision, mission, and our purpose here. And then also this is going to be recorded. So you can go back and listen to it later or share it with anybody.
Yeah, so for our upcoming programs, obviously today we're going to be talking about German construction permitting requirements. We've got a great panel here to present on that topic. In November, we will be presenting the new engineering considerations and instructions for field personnel document. It's a new requirement by the Corps of Engineers Europe District, and we'll be presenting on that topic. Again, we'll have representation from the government. I believe Nathan Fox is going to be presenting with us on that topic. And then on the 15th of December, we will be doing our annual Henkel social event. You'll be getting more information on that topic as we get closer to December. And that's all I have. You can always find more information on our website. Back to you, Brian.
Cool. And so I want to say thank you very much. We have over 270 members, 37 sustaining members. So without you guys, this would not be possible. So this is a great way for all of us to connect, and it just makes a small world, especially here in Europe. We're all working together. So especially want to give a shout out to our sustaining members who really make this possible. And I serve as the young leaders, the president for young leaders. So we have, you can see, we have different training events, networking events, and you can earn PDHs. So I have some links here. And then additionally, there's a leadership development program through SAME, and I was a part of that. Our post president was also a part of that. So I recommend that you guys, if you know anybody who's a young engineer or a new engineer that's interested in working their way up, please go to this link and apply. December 2nd is the deadline. So this was a very good program for me. A lot of readings that they have us do, and so it kind of forces you to do things that you wouldn't normally do on your own, reading different books and meeting with senior leaders. So really great opportunity for me and for anybody else who wants to apply. And also one of our big events last year we had a successful golf event. And so this year we're looking forward to that in May or June. And this is really where we get a lot of our money to support all of our STEM initiatives. Last month, Britta gave a really good presentation on what SAME does for students and how we support Robo Warriors and different camps for students. And so this is really how we fund most of our programs for STEM. So please stay tuned for that. It's a fun day to connect with people and to go golfing. And so I will let Tim introduce the panel. So thank you very much, Tim. Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Excellent, thank you, Brian. Before I get to the panel members, maybe just to introduce the topic a little bit, I was lucky enough to participate in a partnering session with industry and government this week. And one of the government partners was saying how much he enjoyed working for the US government. And one of the reasons for that is because the US government is not profit driven. So they have other motives that drive them, like their mission. And he said that helps him be more honest and behave more ethically, fair and reasonably, which I think is really in the spirit of SAME. And that's why we're here today. All these people are volunteering their time to discuss a really complex issue, which is the permitting requirements for construction in Germany. And this topic is complex for many reasons. One, it's relatively new as a new requirement that we have for the US government. And we're also trying to kind of figure things out and trying to build the plane while we're flying it. And so our goal today is really to raise awareness of where the sticky issues are, and hopefully we can provide more answers than we do questions today. And I'm really honored today to be joined by a very competent panel. And we have Peter Barth as our US government representative, and he is the Corps of Engineers Europe District's host nation liaison, and also USAGE Bavaria's regional program manager. We also have Ulrich Augsberghaus from Burkhard Horn, who works a lot on permitting issues on US government projects, and also AECOM's Brian Goldbach, all these three people work together to try to resolve and succeed with permitting in Germany on the projects that the Corps of Engineers has. So with that, I will turn it over to Peter. And Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tim. So I'm going to talk about accelerated procedure, why we had to implement something, what are the outcome of that, what are the requirements of that, what are some issues that we run into, and try to give a little bit of an outlook on that. So why do we need an accelerated procedure? Basically, the thing is that we have quite some workload. We have significant workload, and we are falling behind in executing that because the default acquisition process of our project, as per NATO SOFA agreement and for the ABG 1975, is going through the Bauamt. So we have to go indirect. This is the default procedure. Get an ABG3 out to the Bauamt and have them designing and constructing the thing. Since a couple of years, 4 or 5 years, they have not the adequate resources to that, and we are significantly falling behind in regard to getting our projects constructed through the Bauamt. I mean, we even wait like 2-3 years before an ABG3 is even approved and accepted, and we have a kickoff after it was initiated or given to the Bauamt. So significant workload, limited resources at the Bauamt, and on the same side, the ABG 1975, and we have here on the screen a summary of what the options are where we can go direct. The ABG 1975 is significantly limiting us, the US, in regard to going direct out there and use our own design contractors, our own designers, and our own construction contractors for the execution. So all three items together kind of resulted in a discussion with the host nation and said, hey, host nation, what is your concern? What can we do to get out of this stall here and get our projects executed on time? And the result is that they are concerned about permitting. They are concerned about US projects being compliant with their regulation, which are kind of defined project specific in a permitting package. And then we said, okay, yeah, no, we can provide you a permitting package. We know what we talk about when talking about permitting. At least we can try to learn it. What can we do to get out of that? And the result is the accelerated procedure, where we take this discussion of what is repair, what is new work, and associated permitting to new work. We took that out of the equation and said, regardless of what the project is, we can go direct, at least in the Rhineland-Pfalz. So that process has been established in the Rhineland-Pfalz for now. So, I mean, the discussion about repair and new work, that is as old as like 1982 when the ABG 1975 was signed. Since then, we have the discussion about what is repair, what is new work. And again, we took that out of the equation and said, regardless of what it is, we can do a $40 million lodge now. We can do $70 million housing through that process direct, as long as we do adequate permitting. Beside the permitting or accelerated procedure, I should say, beside accelerated procedure, something else happened. Just recently, the new work limit. And that list is kind of summary of the options where, as per the ABG 1975, the options that we have to go direct. You see that the new work component is limited to 150,000 euros or 375,000 euros. That limit has been increased to 1.2 million euros. Okay. basically for us is just a compensation of the buy power of the amounts from that were established like 2009, given that industry is now like skyrocketing. That's just a compensation of what we could buy like 10, 15 years ago. But it is an improvement. So with that, we still can go ABG2, but with a new work limit of 1.2 million. And we have the accelerated procedure without any limit. Okay, these are the options. The risk behind that is, I mean, you see, for example, also on that list, the last paragraph there says, integration of equipment, or the second project category is projects with a security requirement during construction. Yeah, here the amounts are also not limited. And we are actually sitting right next to a project, an example that was done on an ABG2. It's the kick. ABG2, unlimited. I'm not saying that the cost should be unlimited, but the approval limit would be not limited by anybody. So we still have the tool ABG2 out there, and we want to maximize this list. We want to maximize the list, and now the maximum is up to 1.2 million. Or we have security requirements, and we have the accelerated procedure. Slide, please. Accelerated procedure. Oh my God, what is it? Well, guess what? It's nothing else but the ABG 1975. What I'm trying to do here is aligning various paragraphs from the accelerated procedure with what we already find in the ABG 1975. We have Title 3 in the ABG 19, or Section 3 in the ABG 1975, which talks about a detailed coordination process. So a detailed coordination process is nothing else but interaction with the host nation to ensure our projects are compliant with host nation laws and regulations. Nothing else what we were supposed to do prior to the accelerated procedure when we did a project like the KIC under the ABG2 process. Need to talk with the host nation. Need to design in accordance to host nation laws and regulations. Need to have them reviewing our drafts. Need to have the construction contractor complying with those requirements. So the brutal truth is, everybody says, oh my God, accelerated procedure. And guess what? We took elements from the ABG 1975 that were there since 1982 to build up that document that we finally agreed on and said, hey, there's an additional project category out there where we can go direct. Now, why do we have problems with permitting? Why is it such a big issue to do permitting? I think that in the past, we have not emphasized permitting requirements as expected by host nation. When the US and host nation came up with the text of the ABG 1975, I think we were falling a little bit behind on that. And now we, all of a sudden, since we want to do, as mentioned, the lodge for 40 million, well, we better get on top of that and get back to where we should be in regard to permitting. So falling behind a little bit might be one aspect. The other aspect, and I think this is the more critical aspect, is we need to remember that we are in the federal construction business, federal for host nation. So federal construction projects in Germany have the privilege that the approving authority is not anymore the county or the city. It is actually the BARM itself. The BARM is now the approving authority and can say yes or no. In federal construction, and again, the US projects are a subcomponent of that. The host nation, the BARM, has to follow their procedures. They have to follow the RB-Bau, for example, which is defining the documents that we have to come up with, the process that we have to do, and all that good stuff. They expect that we also now follow that procedure and provide a permitting package with the content that they would normally produce if they would do this project and would then be the permitting authority. So we are the permitting authority, but they say, yeah, we can give you the permit, but we expect the permitting package to look like a package that we would have to follow. And that is then resulting in the components that have to be in the permitting package. And colleagues like Achim Günther have worked with the BOM and came up with a summary of what are the documents that we expect to see, and I provide an Excel file to you that we can share. So content of the permitting package is also something we struggle with. Unfortunately, even though the BOM is now focusing on the permitting component only, and we don't need to go through an AE acquisition method with a process, or need to go through a design process, or go through a solicitation process. Yes, we freed up quite some resources on their side, but still not enough. And this is a bottleneck, as Brian said. We still have the bottleneck that we have to funnel all the permits, at least in the area that seems to be a center of gravity for now, BOM holder, through a very limited pool of people. To address that, they have numerous times requested that, hey, any coordination, any request should go through the core side. One person has been assigned for that, because it does not make sense for them, or it's simply overwhelming for them. And if like 50 different people call them per day on 20 different projects from 5 different AEs, it doesn't make sense. And with that, we agreed that, hey, requests, coordination, all that good stuff should go through the core. That is in an attempt to resolve the bottleneck or compensate the bottleneck on the host nation side. But we also I think, are struggling with resources on our side, and actually we work on improving that. So talked about content, it's a challenge. Talked about why a package needs to look like that. And talked about, the process that we have to go through and potential problems we are running into. Next slide, please. What's the current status? Despite all those problems, we're doing great. I mean, we have about 80 projects with a total PA of like 40 million that have been approved. We have 3 more requests where we expect approval pretty soon for housing, quite some housing. A hangar even is in there. So it's going well. It's going well. And actually, we shifted a couple of months ago from the accelerated procedure being a pilot, being a test procedure, to we want to establish that permanently. And oh, by the way, we not only want to permanently establish that in Rhineland-Pfalz, we want to reach out to the other states with US presence, like Bavaria, like Hessen, like Baden-Württemberg. And guess what? Hessen and Baden-Württemberg have already indicated that they are interested in that procedure as well. And we hope is not a management tool, but we hope that we kind of that a signature would materialize by December from those 2 states. And actually, the Federal Ministry of Construction is having a discussion in the first week of November with the State Ministry in Bavaria. We want to hash out the questions that they have, the concerns that we have, and we hope we can establish that in Bavaria also very soon. So quite some projects are in design, in construction, even completed. The list is growing, not getting less, and we try to pull into that thing other states as well. And again, this 40-year-old discussion about what is repair, what is new work, we took that out of the equation, and we can do a lot. We can do new Army family housing, significant project. Yeah, and I think we wanted to skip that for a follow-on discussion.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Peter. You know, just hearing you speak, I had made the analogy to we're building the airplane as we're flying it. And, you know, I think the plane we started on was like an Airbus A320. And now with these new states coming on board to this process, it's going to be more like an A380, you know, so double decker, it's just getting bigger. The plane is getting bigger and bigger. And we still need to be building it as we're flying. So, so if we skip over that, and then maybe just to focus a little bit more on some of the tangents of back to signatures, please. To just some of the specifics about what the permitting process looks like, and really what some hands-on activities that need to occur. For some practical advice, we thought we would turn it over to Uli. Uli, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Uli Osterhaus. I'm honored to be here on the panel today. I'm working for AE firm Buchert Horn, and we have indirect and direct contracts where we work for the US government as designers, as well we work for industry and German municipalities also. This was a good view from abroad, what Peter gave us, very good about the big program, the big projects, and how this will be channeled and focused for the future. I'm now more in the position that we are those who do the work and the permitting and the documents. We have large projects, we have big projects which are being processed through US government, for the federal government, and this is correct. Center of gravity is Holder is happening a lot of things at the moment. Also, Mainz-Castell seems to come also for the next time. And I run into not into difficulties, but what I have always to explain and often to explain is that when the design is done partly in the United States or through Americans here in Germany, with Americans, with federal employees, federal people, that there are certain basics which needs to be explained and talked about and again and again and again. And so I just start here. This was, we discussed a bit upfront what could be interesting. The question about the signatures. This is all official work. This is governmental agencies we have to deal with. You are a governmental agency or US government, and so certain formalities have to be kept. And this is that documents which are officially formal documents need to be signed. Signatures has to be on the documents. And what I'm going to tell now a little bit more, these are actually the number one is physical signatures are required at all these documents which are named here. For sure, the building application. I'm talking first about the documents, then I'm talking about who will sign, and then I will talk about when will it be signed. So first we're talking about physical documents, that this is the application itself. This is a format. I could show you a lot of forms now. I do not. This has to be signed. This has appendixes, which needs to be signed. And this has the building application has physically to be signed. Same is, we have not always application procedures. In some states, this works with a building notification, that is Kenntnisgabeverfahren, where this is said, okay, this is like this would be done for the German military. They don't go through permitting procedures as well. They have Kenntnisgabeverfahren as well for Anlagen der Landesverteidigung, that the documents are prepared, that they are presented to the permitting authority, and that they say, we see this, and this has the status and the quality of a permitting document, even if it's just if it's a notification document only. Each building permit or building documentation, we have small projects, we have big projects, but vision about bigger projects, $50 million, some of these new construction or renovation construction. This is a lot of drawings being involved there. Each of the drawings has to be signed. The calculator by whom, but not in theory formally correct. Each of the drawings, which are part of the Bauantrag, needs to be signed physically. Then for sure, we have as part of the Bauantrag itself or at the application, we have the calculations. These are either engineering calculations, so that we say that the structural engineer has to verify, that the structural engineer has to sign, that there is a proofing engineer who has to make some calculations or to verify the calculations. We have the same for the architect. He has to calculate the area, he has to calculate the volume, the Kubatur, and he has to sign this. We have major cost figures which needs to be signed. This presumably in the form DIN 276, DIN 276, which is the German system of cost grouping, which they want to see. What's technical, what's mechanical, what's building, what's interior, and so forth. This needs to be signed from the calculation part, and for sure we have the Bauphysik, we have noise protection, we have energy consumption, energy saving in the building, and like this, all these calculations needs to be signed. We have more special or in industry, we have the Löschwasserrückhaltevermögen, we have Löschwasser, fire protection, water, that this needs somehow to be kept, not maybe just go into the creek or wherever, and like this. These also have to be produced and signed. Then this is a lot of signatures. Who is signing the documents? And As you can see, I could have made a matrix, but then nobody would understand. Table, who is signing what and where. We have for sure, we have prior to the construction work starts, the Bauantrag itself, this needs to be signed by the Bauherr for sure. This is the architect has to sign the Bauantrag or the application document itself. And this cannot be done by every architect. This needs architects who are enlisted, I would say, that are member of the architectural chamber, or engineers which are member of the engineers chamber of the recent state. We are, as Peter said, we are talking about several states in Germany where US projects occur. Rhein-Main-Pfalz, Bavaria, Hesse, Baden-Württemberg. Some of them are in North Rhine-Westphalia also. Ulmen, I had one, which were there. And so in some countries, they are stricter that they say, oh, this have to be architects licensed in the special country, not architects, but engineers in the special country. And then you have to make a certain shift or additions. So this is the architect. We have the Fachplaner and the expert. These are the expert planners. They have to sign on their documents, on their plans. The mechanical engineer, the fire protection engineer for sure, the structural engineer, he has to sign each of the documents. He generates each of the plans. Then again, there's a follow-up. Proof engineers, they are those who either on behalf of the German government, but normally here we're talking for the US government, this is done internally. That, for example, for the structural, you have structural engineer, and then you have independent entity, the proofing structural engineer, and they confirm that they have recalculated the project and the sizes and the loads and whatever, that this is good and correct and professionally done, and they sign that this is correct. Same is for fire protection, because the German government says, oh, makes sense, where the highest risk is, this is better double checked. And double checked is by signature. People who sign are required certain to stand to with what they have said and calculated and confirmed with their signature. So these are a lot of people who have signed, male or female, engineers, architects, owner, so forth. Then also I have the question, when has it to be signed, what has to be signed, when are signatures needed? This will somehow deal a little bit what we discuss later on, difference between design phase and construction phase. I know the difference between design phase and construction phase, so to say that the application form for the construction permit itself, this normally in Germany, this is called after the Haubau. We have in Germany, we have the license phase 1 through 8 or 1 through 9, and the Haubau is 1 to 4, which is advanced concept design plus the permitting documents. And this is what will be then turned in to the Bauamt. This will include structural, architectural, as far as possible, fire protection drawings, and so forth. Also, things outside from the terrain, geotech, hazmat investigation, and so forth. This will be done at 65% completion, and this will form the basis of the Bauantrag. Normally, this is done at the point where you don't expect too much changes after it, or no severe changes. Everyone knows the project, the further it moves, the more difficult it becomes to change. And if this is construction permit request, no more changes, no more serious changes any longer. Then, but at the same time, we have that towards the authorities, when the construction work actually was awarded to a general contractor or to whatever organization this will do, that then the construction work start needs to be indicated and signed, and the official form is sent to the Bauamt, where it is then said, okay, we have now started with the construction work to be signed by the owner. We have again then the Fertigstellung Rohbau needs to be signed and should be signed. I know this also from other projects we do on the German economy. Then we always have to sign so, and then after the building is completed and this is intended to be used, then we have again notify the authorities that the work is now done, and this is a Fertigstellungsanzeige and the plans to be used. And then I guess this is signatures enough. please be aware, whatever, whether you're the government or working for the contractor as well, that this is somehow to be taken serious. I run as a designer or as a contractor, sometimes in the problem that I don't find someone who signs the documents. For example, on the side of the government, you say needs to be signed, who is the owner, who's the owner builder, and then you have to look and to find. I have the same situation that when talking with American designers, that they shall sign the document and that we have to put the seal on it and then somehow present that this is equal to what would be the German membership in the Kammer. Then this needs to be signed, and for the architects also. And this is day-to-day business, and I might say this is okay. Next slide, please. Which I would turn over.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Questions at the end.
Uli, yeah, we'll have further discussion on that. And, everything that you were speaking about, Uli, and you presented it so clearly and so concisely. I think it's really helpful. In reality, there's a lot of nuances to these issues. For example, the proofing engineer, I know in previous projects, it wasn't always clear who is going to hire the proofing engineer. I think we've gotten clarity on that in the meantime, but those nuances always introduce themselves into projects and require a lot of good communication between the government, the contractor, and the designer. And further on those topics, then we'll turn it over to Brian to talk about the who, what, why, when, and how.
Right.
Right.
Thanks. And I'd like to build upon, I think, what Peter and Ulrich have been presenting already today. And I think the who, the first question is really, it's the recognition that it's a team effort. It's not just the AE, it's not just the architect. It becomes all the stakeholders in the project. And that discussion and that teamwork has to be started when projects are initiated, when they're funded, when we're proposing our task orders to make sure we have clarity, to make sure that the PMs, who are often changing in the core district, are also understanding what a permit is in Germany and the implications to that. And so the other part about the who is, as we've talked about, is not just the expert engineers signing, but it's also the technical leads of design work that are being requested to submit their diplomas and their certificates. So there's just to be aware that there's maybe some data protection law issues in Germany where we're presenting documents that we're supposed to control. What happens to those documents? So I think we need to be aware of that. The what, I think, again, is the RB BAU documentation that Peter spoke to earlier. We have that checklist that Achim Gunther has put together. And over the course of the last couple of years, we've seen that document has been evolving. It's been refined. And I think every project that we see, there's something new that we have to address. One of those issues there is when we're getting our task orders and our scope of works, often this information is not included in the RFP packages. So I think as a team, again, we need to make sure that we're upfront clarifying what that paragraph permit says in the scope of work. And there's a lot more effort perhaps that needs to be proposed and negotiated depending on the type of project that we're getting into. The other topic about, I think there, Patrick, you asked a question as well online about the permit itself. What does the permit look like? Is it the Kenntnisgabe? Do we actually get a permit? Do we get a red dot? Does it go on the construction site? Who gets copies of those? I haven't seen anything personally yet on any of the projects we worked on. Does the COR, which stakeholders gets that information? And maybe something, Peter, to talk about, later as part of our Q&A. The why is, why are we doing this? And I think, Peter, you did, again, a great job of helping explain and breaking that down, because sometimes we look at projects, whether it's a transformer, whether it's a new water pipe system for sprinkler systems, that may not require a permit on the private market because it's just a utility upgrade. But clarifying that any and all repair or new work now can be covered on this ACP, I think maybe brings some clarity into it. But it also raises the level of effort as the AE, who has to then go through that checklist and maybe produces documents that we normally would not expect needs to be produced. And that level of effort and that time frame for the studies and reports need to be considered in our projects. And then the other thing with that also is when it's transferred to the constructor or the construction phase of that there's often these boundaries of moving and shifting liability of who's going to pick up that process of documentation. And it's not always the AE if we're not involved in construction, like on a design build project. We do have construction phase services, but our scope of work does not normally encompass monitoring and managing the construction works itself. So that getting that clarity is worked through. I think when is a great question. Depending on the type of project that we're engaged with, we're starting to see the terminology preliminary permit packages versus final permit packages. And those two terms are not really contractually defined in terms of what's encompassed in a preliminary versus a final. The final is just the finishing of that package. When do we need to get that into the core? When does it get to the LBB? We've seen issues too where that preliminary package still hasn't been looked at and the project has continued in design. And so coordinating that, getting it into the schedule, I think is one of the key issues to think about. And again, the how really is I think part of what's being worked on right now is what is the process? When do we get engaged? If we're not going to have direct communications with the LBB, if we have a point of contact in the core to make sure that we don't have bottlenecks delaying processes any further than they need to, or what happens when we get requests coming back from the LBB for additional or changed studies or additional research that was not foreseen at the task board award. Who's paying for that additional work? When a proofing engineer is looking at, let's say, design revisions or submittals from a contractor, and that repetitive work is not typically captured under their fixed fee, how do we compensate that? How do we deal with that contractually? So there's a lot of issues that still appear to be open, but I think this is a great first step in putting it out and engaging industry on this for a way forward. That.
Thank you, Brian. Now, if I just maybe can summarize a couple of points here, we're not done. We're going to enter into the discussion phase, but there's a couple points I want to underscore. We can move to the discussion slide. A couple points I want to underscore is if you just listen to all three of these people and what they're saying and the complexity of this issue, and a recognition from all stakeholders that this effort takes time and energy and is an element of every scope of work, one that needs to be negotiated and agreed to in a fair and reasonable manner. So it's going to be part of the scopes of work. It's going to be a task. It's going to be something that needs to be negotiated and agreed upon in terms of level of effort. What does it take to actually get this stuff done? And therefore, back to the purpose of this is to raise the awareness on how complex actually is this issue and who needs to be involved and why would a AE cost estimate include disciplines for all of this work and an agreement on who does that and who takes the lead and is the main point of contact for the permitting authorities, and getting agreement on that up front will really help the project as it goes down the line. So further on that is our discussion topics that we've come up with as a group. And Peter, do you want to kind of lead us into the first discussion topic a little bit, introduce it a little bit?
Okay, acquisition of the project itself is a driving factor for the sequencing or the schedule for the permitting. And also a little bit of an awareness that the final signature of this agreement was delayed by like half a year. By that time, we already started doing designs and we're supposed to start working on a permitting package. So that's one aspect. The other aspect, hey, we do permitting here in Germany. Permitting in Germany is not based on a final design. The approving authority, we don't want to know what kind of pipe material you put into the ground. We want to know why is it like that dimension? Why do you need that? And that information you find typically in a calculation where you do the design analysis of the project, for example. Or we don't want to see what kind of carpet you have. We don't want to, we want to see, okay, what is the sound attenuation in your building? They want to see what is the energy performance of your building. All that information, you basically get that together, when you are in a concept of the design, not a final design. With that, the idea is to synchronize the design process as you go from concept to final, have your permitting kind of done at concept level or based on a concept level, and continue parallel with the permitting, parallel with the design, with the final design. So that at the end, you are not, and feedback from the approving authority, incorporate that. And yeah, sometimes things change. Then in the design process, you may need to go back to your permitting package and do a tech tour and include that change also in the permitting package. So it's an iterative process, painful sometimes, yes, costly sometimes, yes. But things like that need to be considered.
And
So,
then, Peter, if I could just interrupt on that point, the permitting package at the concept stage, does it actually go then to LBB for discussion?
the idea is that first we have between the designer and the core, or actually when we start doing the package, the approval package to even go down the accelerated procedure route, then we have an interaction with the host nation and saying, you know, this is the scope of the project. What do you think needs to go in there? And we have developed, I think Günther has developed an Excel file, which I forwarded to you.
And will be made available to everybody online. Yep.
And that list is basically a general list, and the ABB is supposed to say, okay, yeah, you know what, this is a pure innovation. You're not outside. You don't need the soil survey. So you will find soil survey on that list, but you may don't need it for your specific project. Again, it's a framework, but the idea is to get that back with some information of what we expect in the permitting package. Expectation may change based on an exact description of the scope, because we may find out that as part of this renovation project, we still have something like do a sprinkler tank outside, and then we probably need a soil survey. It's a little bit, we try to be as accurate as possible, but sometimes we need to adjust based on information provided to them.
And a follow-up question on that, sorry. So if you start at the concept stage with the permitting application, what is your experience in terms of how the project changes from concept to, say, 65, and how is that dealt with in terms of the iterative permitting process and informing the host nation?
So once we have this feedback back from the host nation, well, we share that with the AEs, and our team wants to see a preliminary package. You said preliminary package, where it said, you know what, we want to hit like 90% of the format, 90% of the content, roughly around. And again, based on concept design. And again, parallel with moving into 65% design and as the project is evolving. Once we have locked in on the scope, said this is it, getting all the signatures, and then provide the package to the host nation. Did I kind of answer your question?
You did, and maybe I'll just ask Brian. Brian, your experience going from concept to 65.
Well, I think the newer task orders are at least showing a break in the process, which I think is a good step, so that the design process isn't being wasted, right? Mm-hmm. But I think my question, which I'm still unsure about, is when you say that list is checked first per project. I still haven't seen that. I still see the list, but I don't know when, or haven't seen that pre-coordination has occurred for each type of project. And so maybe I'm not seeing it. Maybe it's something that's just starting, but I think that's, and it's also the timeline with that, right?
Yeah. It's a timeline associated with that, and you see some things have changed in your task orders, and this is the process we also go through. Going a little bit back to when it was initiated, we had projects already started on a design build basis. So we do it in a concept, and that concept will migrate into a request for proposal, and then the contract is doing the final design. We struggle a little bit on identifying when is the perfect milestone in that acquisition process on when the permitting starts. Do we want that permitting task, at least a preliminary package, Do we want to put that on the AE that did the concept? Or do we want to put that on the construction company that then is finalizing the project design and goes into construction? That is something that we also struggle a little bit with. And the trend is that we go away from what we started, design build. The trend is going a little bit more into design bid build. Like, okay, our design team is doing the 100% of the design, synchronizing that with the permitting. And then when we have an award to industry, we have then also the permitting, at least a positive signal from the host nation.
Very good.
I might add this something regarding the timeline, that this is also necessary that the permitting documents are not submitted after the construction has already started.
Yep.
And saying that this is done by the original MEP, this makes somehow sense regarding the timeline from the government, that this is handed in before any award, before construction work start. So this helps them to provide them with enough time and information to have a look at the documentation.
Good. Thank you, Uli. And we have a question in the room, please.
Peter, on the first development, actually, I think Nick Irwin, we've worked before, but I've never actually made.
I'll repeat the question for the online group. Just Nick Irwin is asking a question. Go ahead, Nick.
So speaking specifically about trying to get that initial, I guess, review by the OBD, so we go to them and we say we'd like to do an accelerated procedure project, and they have to give us permission basically to do that, and then we turn around and the next step is to send them probably 35% of all of the stuff filled up. They give us that project specific breakdown of what they think is applicable. I haven't seen one of those. I know our newest thing is to try to actually get a team spreadsheet in a task order solicitation at the time of task order award in the AE, and I don't think that that's ever happened yet. We're trying to do the first one. So I guess who does that? Are we taking that on to try to get that initial step through project management?
Yeah, and this,
Let me repeat the question, just to make sure that our audience could hear the question. Nick Irwin was asking, who takes responsibility for going to the regulatory authority and then figuring out what needs to be,
How that checklist is populated.
Right.
And specifically then issued to the contractor.
to the contractor,
True.
and who takes that responsibility in doing that? Peter, over to you.
so I think this is a good step forward that we get this list implemented and have this also as part of the acquisition process sent out. This is important. While again, we want to share that list with not project specific information, but at least like increase awareness that something like that is coming with project specific requirements filled out by sharing it simply with the community here. And that goes a little bit back to where we struggle when I was talking about the slides, is that the host nation has requested that we kind of funnel all those requests, that interaction through USACE on those projects. And this is a little bit different because from private sector here in Germany, the designer of record would reach out to the county office, would directly reach out to the city.
Right.
In this case, we have specifically requested, please don't do that, because again, if I get 50 calls per day from different designers on 40 different projects, it's not going to go anywhere.
Chaos.
And that is a problem. And we struggle with that. But the ideal world, and I realize I'm not living in an ideal world, would be that, hey, in that package, we would have at least a good description of what the project scope is. Have at least that list in there with some initial feedback. I assume, and this is an expectation on my side, is that if I have a designer that is used to do designs in Germany in accordance to host nation laws and regulations, that if that designer sees, I have to design a building with a certain square footage, I probably want to look in escape routes. Okay. I may have, based on the use of that building, which we should provide in our scope, based on that use, he said, oh, wait a minute, we may work here with a sprinkler system per host nation, not only per NFPA. So based on the scope, my expectation is that a designer that is qualified to do designs here in Germany starts already thinking about, okay, I may need to look in those things. There's a certain expectation on my side as well, because different, and that might not be compliant with the bar regulation, but if you look in the host nation state codes, and how it's structured there, who is doing what. When you look in those states code, the Bauherr, that guy that is initiating that construction, his responsibility is hire qualified people. That's it. So I'm playing dumb, and I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at playing dumb, because I say, hey, I need to hire qualified people. I need to hire qualified people for that job. So I actually I myself tell our team that is consisting of people that just came over from across the pond. Don't tell our designers what you think is the permitting requirement, because many times we end up with, oh, this is an ABG2. This is only repair. I don't have a permitting requirement. And then I find myself in a discussion with the bond about a fire protection concept. So this is a little bit of a do loop, yes. Will we ever be able to define in an RFP 100% of the permitting requirement? I don't think so. But I do expect some qualification on the other side of the table, where I said, yeah, we looked at the scope of this project, and based on our thinking, we may need a fire protection concept. I need to earmark some resources for that when we go into the negotiation.
I agree, but I guess I had a slightly different meaning to my question. Not talking about the interaction with the AE yet, the AE task order, talking about the initial reach out to the LDV. We won't have an AE at that time, right? We know what that package needs to look like. For your contract, that's the 1391. We get away with that, have them respond with a concept of what's going to be needed that we can hand to our AE. Or if Milcons are usually easy, we have a planning shred, often a 15% concept. I want to have something like that. It's not very specific.
Yeah.
Internally, we have a concept of
And
what would they go to the LED the very first time.
So Nick Irwin has followed up Peter's answer with a further question, a further definition of his question, which was really, it's not so much between the AE and the government as much as pre-scope of work issuance, how the government goes to the host nation to ask what might be in a permitting package, so that there can be better definition in the scope of work. So maybe.
Yes. So I think that goes back to that question, when and when is that first step happening? And just so you know, online, Neo asked a question similar about the checklist that may differ between Bundesländer states, right? And if that's going to be consolidated at some point. So it does dovetail into your question, Nick. And it's something that we've come up with as well, where we struggle when we see the RFP, is that we have to establish a level of effort and resources from our side. And in lieu of that information being provided as clarity, I think the first step that the AEs have to do is give you our best guess of that, right? But I think it would be beneficial for everyone if that first step is actually implemented from the US side with the host nation authorities into the tender packages.
I really think it happens.
Right.
We have to have the answer that we can go AE before we can get the scope of what you do.
So definitely the first step is seeking clarity, confirmation of, hey, is this an AP process or not? The problem that we then run into is like, okay, our assessment is based on, there might be some new work in there. We better ask for an accelerated procedure and seek some input. Now, on a Milcon project or NAT funded project, I'm many times in a very good position, because with that we have maybe a standard floor layout. We have maybe a planning charrette document, great information. And it's more like pick and choose, get from like 70 drawings, the couple meaningful drawings into that request and send it over to the host nation when we do the AP request. How many times have you, when an SRM project comes for like 5 million, have you seen more than 2 lines on a 4283? That is the challenge. That is the challenge. Yeah. It's a catch-22. It's a catch-22 because yes, I have many times we should have on a Milcon project, planning documents. We talk about a site plan, talk about a floor plan. At least these are the functions that I want to get in this building, and I think I need 1,000 square feet for doing that. But on an SRM project, and I'm not saying that this is bad, because we kind of were used to do that. Now we have an additional layer we have to go through. But many times we have an authorization to execute a project, to look for the acquisition, but we would already need design information to log in on the acquisition process. And that is, I think, a challenge. And regardless, if we talk about accelerated procedure, ABG2, because that is part of that equation too, or ABG3 even. Sometimes we on the US side collectively struggle with, hey, when we start talking about acquisition process, have we full awareness of what this project is going to look like? Okay. And I mean, we are trying to go away from EBC things, but like 2 years ago, 5 years ago, it sometimes looked like, hey, I have a bunch of money. I want to see what I can get for that. And it's not going to work for accelerated procedure.
That's, I guess, a continuation of my thought process, is that it's really okay with getting money in here. Wanted to do something where this procedure not going to be quick, and you have an undefined timeline with the LDDs on how quickly that turnaround is going to be. Say, yeah, you can do this. Go ahead.
Yeah,
So-
I might add something from the AE's side point of view. This is now speaking about project that's located in Hesse. We have a variety of projects on Mainz-Kastell, where we are part of the design group, and as an AE being responsible to work on the permitting documents. And there the situation was so that there was a master planning document generated, and then this was shared via the ABG2 with the German government higher headquarter levels. And this then resulted into certain correspondence in our back between the Hessische Bauamt and the DPW, which resulted in the fact when we did contact the Hessische Bauamt, they were aware, they had already certain notifications. They have the same type of lists like Achim Günther did produce for Rheinland-Pfalz. We got something similar for Hessen, where you first look and said, oh, so much, but then you realize not everything is always all the time needed. And then this is the approach. They took as basis documents from master planning.
But I guess the takeaway from that discussion, from that subject, is really like, okay, there's a planning phase in this project.
Yeah.
And if you may recall that one of those slides that I had, this interaction with the host nation should start during this planning effort. Right. Which, by the way, is also something that can be contracted and say, hey, you know what? In that planning effort, when we try to figure out what this project even is, can we also look a little bit into host nation requirements? Like, what is the dimension of the building? I mean, we did, for example, for ORTC at Graph, it's pretty decent program. In the start phase, like, haven't done the first 25% of the building design, that stuff. We had a planning effort where we specifically invited the BAM to that and say, hey, this is the scope that we think. What do you think? And we had some preliminary input that helped us developing, I think, planning documents that are not only useful for the US, but also for the host nation. And that got them started faster on approving an ABG3, for example. Got them started faster on hiring AEs because we had a better understanding of what the scope of the project is. So planning, I think, is not only like, okay, let's try to find out what the budget is. Can we fit that building in that corner? Planning, I think, is also should talk about the acquisition process itself. Can it go direct? Should it be an indirect? Hey, and if we go direct, can we think about a little bit about, this is a permitting requirement here? Right. So planning is, I think, should extend a little bit into the arena of how do we want to execute that thing? Is it a JOC? Is it a MATOC? Is it an ABG2? Is it an ABG3? Is it an accelerated procedure?
What level of preliminary concept you're going to need if you want to go AP with your project?
Right. And maybe, yeah, just to underscore that for the group online is to me, it's the importance of inclusivity and how we can include the host nation at early stages, but also, as Nick was just saying, the end user, to make them aware that the more information we can get about projects, especially projects end of the fiscal year, SRM type projects, that we can go to the host nation and try to figure out what is going to be required permitting wise. All of that, very important, very helpful. Brian.
Okay, so Anil, I think we touched about your question about the checklist, and I think from what Peter was introducing in the beginning, that for the states of Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, that those lists will be developed through negotiations as you continue on in that process. And we do have a new question in from Tammy about the federal versus state compensation for environmental, I'm assuming. So, Peter.
Okay, so beside the building permit, that is like stipulated in the local or in the state construction ordinance, Landesbauordnungen, we have other permitting components as well. Because so the BAM becomes the permitting authority for what is directly related to that building. And that is kind of tied to the state construction ordinance. But we have other permitting components as well out there. For example, environmental permitting. So this building is caused, if I build something new, the building is causing an impact to the environment. That permitting authority does not shift over to the BAM. Okay. It is if we have, for example, a permitting request to convert untouched land, a forest, into constructible land. It's a Waldumwandlungsverfahren, and the federal forestry is the permitting authority for that one. Does not shift. So that's the permitting authority. Now, the compensation can go either by a state compensation law, but there's also a federal compensation regulation out there. The states typically insist on, hey, my regulation in my state, you're going to use that. I don't care about what the federal government has out there. So we have a competition of what do we even apply to that permitting process sometimes. So half a year ago, we had that discussion at Bavaria, and the agreement in Bavaria was, oh, we want to go with the state compensation requirements because it's a better basis for the US. That is based on, in Bavaria, we have huge training areas, and that compensation is on the training area, and it was simply a better basis for us. Now, what Tammy is referring to is probably a project in Baumholder, where we do not have that luxury of having a huge, like 20,000 acres of training area. So we have a little bit of a restriction. And now we look into, hey, what is the better basis for us? It seems at this point that the federal compensation is the better basis for us, but the state of Rheinland-Pfalz is reluctant to agree to that. We have actually discussions started yesterday in the ABG 1975 working group, where we sit together with the state and the federal government talking about that. And it seems on the construction side of the state, there's the agreement there. We want to also go with the federal guideline, but the environmental protection ministry, the state ministry, they are still pushing for the state ordinance. Not worked out, but it is a good example that we have competing permitting requirements sometimes between the state and the federal government. Another example would be like fire protection. Oh my God, there's a guideline from a federal guideline for Brandschutzleitfaden, a federal guideline from how to address escape routes and that stuff. The states say, hey, no, not going to happen in my area. It would be easier because then we have a unified approach throughout the state, but sorry, not happening yet.
The beauty of a federal system. Yeah. Okay, it looks like we don't have any other questions, and we are kind of running up towards the end of the hour. I thought maybe just a couple of summary points from things that we can take away from today's discussion. Peter spoke about the need to have qualified designers and engineers in Germany when it comes to permitting, and you expect that your industry partner has knowledge of these issues and can act as a good advisor on this topic. And I I would say that the reason I say that is simply for, obviously, there are a lot of AEs out there that want to participate in work in Germany, and they are very welcome to do that. And but the awareness that you need that specific skill in order to succeed with designing in Germany is absolutely necessary. So seek that out before you come. Secondly, again, back to my point about effort, really what a complex topic this is, depending on where you're building and what you're building and how you're building. And that complexity will increase as more states take on this process. So this will be an ongoing topic as we go forward. And then maybe just to reiterate this final point that Nick brought up, and I think it's very relevant. You know, when it comes to SRM and the less information we have on a project, it becomes more complex to figure out what needs to be permitted and what is relevant and what is not relevant. And being inclusive in terms of pulling in the correct stakeholders so that you can get that information and share that information will be really important to the success of projects going forward. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up our panel discussion. I do want to thank our volunteers that we have here. I can tell you this has been a long process that we've been preparing for, and all of our board members have been very generous with their time and their information and their willingness even to come here early and help us move tables around for our group. So I want to thank everybody for that on this panel, and also everybody behind the scenes who helped out, and you know, the SAME board members and everybody who put effort into making today happen. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian to wrap up the meeting. Brian, over to you.
My
Yes.
camera here?
Yeah.
Cool. Yes, thank you so much. Tim, maybe if you could organize this for every single country in the AOR, that would be immensely helpful to all of us. So,
I'll get on it.
okay, good. Hey, on behalf of SAME, I just wanted to shake your hand and present you with
Thank you, sir.
our SAME coin. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please. Thank you. And you know, Tim is the guy behind the scenes organizing all of this, and so you took over just recently, and it's been seamless. And so thank you for organizing this. So I'll shake your hand and give you a coin too.
It's my job.
Yeah,
you know.
right. Well, thank you very much. So,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody, for being online, and for everybody in the room. We got like 50 people in the room, so you're missing out, hundreds of people. So,
Hundreds.
All
It's a
right.
huge crowd.
thank you very much. So,
Thanks,
with
Brian.
that-
All right. With that, we'll end the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.